Good morning. How we doing? Good to have you with us on this Sunday morning. I need your help, all right? I'm going to put a phrase up on the screen here, and it's got to fill in the blank. So at the very end of it, I need you to help me out by giving me the word that finishes this phrase out. You got it? All right, pretty easy. Here we go. Patience is a what? Virtue. No, that's not the right answer, okay? It is a virtue. Yes, you're exactly right. Patience is a virtue. This phrase was introduced about 100 to 200 years after the time of Christ, but we really find it being used in the Middle Ages. You find a lot of ancient Latin texts. They would use it to teach Latin, but also to teach morality. Now, this particular phrase here, patience is a virtue, is something that even though it's about 2,000 years old, its meaning really hasn't changed. It's still the same today as it was then. Now, this idea of do we have the ability to wait or endure difficulties without becoming agitated to what's happening around us? And if we're able to do that, then it says something about our character and, as they would say then, even our moral integrity. How about we put this to the test, all right? I'm going to give you a couple scenarios. And as I'm going through these scenarios, kind of think in your mind, how patient am I in these situations? Here's the first one. You pull up to a red light, right? You already know where this is going. You pull up to a red light. There's one car in front of you. The light turns green. Every other car begins to move forward, except the one right in front of you. They're still on their brakes. In fact, their head's down. You're pretty sure they're either praying dead or they're looking at their phone, which is probably the last one in that. What do you do in that moment? I mean, how patient are you when everyone else is moving and you're stuck behind the one person who's not? You go to the grocery store. You got a pretty full cart. You can't really go through the self-checkout lines. And so you look, and there's a miracle because it's not Wegmans or Trader Joe's, but there are 4 lanes that are open. And you look at these lanes, and 3 of them have at least 3 people, if not more, in them. You find one that's only got 1 person in it, and you're like winning, right? What a great day. Look how lucky I am, and look at how stupid those people are. So you get in this line, and you wait, and you watch as everybody else in all those other lines walk past you as they go out. What's your level of patience right there in that particular moment? Like we may say patience is a virtue, but I bet most of us aren't going to be very patient in those situations, and most of us aren't patient when it comes to life in general. But when that patience is tested, how do we respond? That's what we're going to talk about today as we continue this series called Playbook. If you haven't been here, quick little recap. This series is based on the book of James. It's a 12-week series that we've broken into 3 mini-series because of kind of the way James is written. James is actually a letter, and in this letter, it's snippets of teachings that James gave. James was probably had the role kind of like a lead pastor in the early church that we find in Jerusalem in the book of Acts. And so he's got these little snippets, and they put this kind of place them together within this letter to send out to these Jewish Christians. We said this in this series. When you read James, like one moment he'll be on this topic and it seems like he jumps over here, jumps here, then he jumps back to the first topic and then starts a new topic, goes back to the first topic. But again, it's these snippets of teachings that he gives that are compiled into this one letter. And so what we're going to talk about today, this idea of patience, really we're going to see how what we're reading today actually connects back to something that we've talked about over the first few weeks of this series. But today, it's going to be about patience. What does James have to say about patience in the context of the time that he was alive, and how does that fit us today? We're going to be in the last chapter, James chapter 5, starting with verse 7. Dear brothers and sisters, be patient as you wait for the Lord's return. Consider the farmers who patiently wait for the rains in the fall and in the spring. They eagerly look for the valuable harvest to ripen. You too must be patient. Take courage, for the coming of the Lord is near. You notice there's a theme here with what James writes. He says a couple times, be patient, for Jesus is coming. What is James talking about here? Well, this patience and the Lord's coming actually go back to a couple things that we've talked about in this series already. James's audience were Jewish Christians. They were people who were following Jesus or were Jewish in their faith. They found out Jesus was the Messiah. They began to follow Jesus, and so they're followers of Christ. But as I said, I think it was 2 weeks ago, we were talking about favoritism. I said about 60% of the population at that time was living in poverty. And so this early church is majority of the people that are there are living in poverty. You have these economically poor Christians, and they're struggling, right? If you were here a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about how they were struggling under the exploitation of the wealthy, of the rich, of the elite in those days. And so they're facing social, economic, and even religious hardships and oppression because of how the rich are treating them. They're living in the midst of this, right? They're struggling with what is happening here because so much of this is directed at them. So part of this be patient piece is connected to that. Another part to understand is that in those days when they were talking about Jesus coming back, it's imminent. I don't know if you know, this week the rapture, whatever that is, was supposed to happen. So either we all didn't make it, all right? So sorry about that. Or Jesus changed his mind, right? And it's going to happen in October based on what this one, I would say, cult is talking about. Why I bring this up is like in James's day, they're not thinking, 2,000 years from now, on September 23rd, 2025, Jesus is going to come back. They're not talking about that. They're not thinking in those terms. They're not even thinking 200 years from their time. They're not even thinking 20 years. They're thinking like imminently. Like 20 weeks is probably too much. 20 days, maybe that's more realistic. And so their idea of Jesus coming back is like Jesus is coming back now. There's a little issue here in that when we look at James, this writing that we have is about 8 to 10 years after the resurrection of Jesus. And so here you have these people that are poor, right? They're struggling. They're having a hard time. They've been told Jesus is coming back. It's going to alleviate all this economic and social, religious oppression that they're facing, and yet Jesus hasn't come back. So to them, why hasn't Jesus done that yet? James says, be patient, for the Lord is coming. And then he throws in this example of the farmer. Maybe you grew up in a farming community. Maybe you grew up on a farm, and so you understand kind of how that works, right? You got a field. You get the field ready. You prep it. You till it. You put the seeds in. You pull the weeds. Now, today, thankfully, we've got these incredible irrigation systems that we can put in play. We start them up, and they'll water these fields. They'll water your garden. And in those days, that wasn't the case. Right? The farmer would do all this stuff, would prep the field and till the field and put the seeds and take care of the weeds. But then you just kind of had to hope and pray that God would send the rain. When James is writing this part of James 5, he's trying to help the audience see the similarities here. Like the farmer's putting in the work to get this field ready, but the farmer also has to wait for the rain. And when the rains came, then the harvest could happen and the crops would grow. Here's James, who's encouraging this early church through their financial hardships, through their social hardships. He's saying, I know you're facing troubles. Be patient. Jesus is coming. I know you're facing oppression at the hands of the elite. Be patient. Jesus is coming. I know you're still facing persecution from the religious leaders because of this faith you have in following Jesus. Be patient because Jesus is coming. I know you're wondering when Jesus is coming back. Be patient, like the farmer, right? Because Jesus is coming. And by the way, when Jesus comes, God will take care of those injustices. God will take care of the oppression of the people who did this to you. If they haven't come to faith too, you don't need to worry about that. Be patient like the farmer. Jesus is coming. What James is saying is stop focusing on the things you're going through and put your focus on your faith. Don't let your troubles weaken your faith. Like your hope's not found in the removal of the sufferings, that all of a sudden if suffering's gone, everything's going to be great. He's not saying that at all. He says your hope is found in Christ's promised return. So be patient, again, like the farmer, for Jesus to return. We can kind of read that, and my guess is it's kind of the same mentality for them then. Like, okay, that sounds great. That's actually really hard to live out, isn't it? But this issue is beginning to creep into the life of this church. Look at verse 9. Don't grumble about each other, brothers and sisters, or you will be judged. For look, the judge is standing at the door. Back in the late 1900s, some of you will get that a little bit later on, but at George Bush International Airport, they were having a dilemma. People were complaining about how long they had to wait when they got to baggage claim. And so the airport decided, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put more baggage handlers in place. And so they did. And this helped alleviate some of the tension that was there. It got the time that they had to wait to about 8 minutes. And that was within industry standards at the time. The issue was these complaints kept coming. They dug a little bit deeper, and they found that within these 8 minutes, this is crazy to me, 1 minute was spent walking from your gate to baggage claim, which is absolutely crazy. 7 minutes were spent waiting there for your baggage to come out onto the carousel. Here's what they did. Like, we're going to teach those people. They moved the gates further away from baggage claim. Guess what happened? There were less complaints because of that. Why were there less complaints? Because people had further to walk to get there. And by the time they got there, their bags were there. They were ready to go. Like, hey, we don't have to wait anymore. We walked a long distance, but we don't have to wait anymore for our baggage to get there. Richard Larson's an MIT researcher, and he's a leading expert on waiting in lines, which sounds like a great job to me, if you ask. He said this: occupied time walking to baggage claim feels shorter than unoccupied times standing at baggage claim. The point of this is that waiting seems unproductive. So when we have to wait, it leads to complaining. James is trying to say, hey, your waiting's not unproductive. There's something about this. There's something to come. Jesus is coming back, but in their waiting, there's complaining. James uses the word grumble here in the translation I'm using. Maybe a translation you're using or other translations use the word complaining. Makes sense. Because usually when we're waiting, usually when we're not patient, one of the things that we like to do is we like to complain. Research says that we complain 15 to 20 times per day about anything. So as you go through the rest of your day today, kind of keep a list of how many times that you complain by the end of the day. This is interesting too. If you're in a conversation with someone, estimates are we complain once per minute. Research also shows that we oftentimes don't even realize we're complaining. Like, we've gotten so used to complaining that our brains are so hardwired to complain. We complain and we don't even know that we're doing that. Why do we complain? It's not usually because we desire change. Most of the time we complain because we're venting frustrations that we have or expectations we might have aren't being met. We're seeking sympathy, maybe for something that we've experienced in our life. Or here's my favorite one. Or we complain to build social bonds with others who share similar negative perspectives. Think about that one for just a moment. But complaining doesn't help us. Complaining actually hinders us. Complaining hinders us from developing patience and endurance. When we complain, it usually involves the criticism of other people. It's finding fault in other people or structures. Maybe it comes from troubles that we faced in the past in our lives, but many times we complain because of what we're going through right now. Life is hard. And we don't know how to deal with it. We are stuck. And so instead of trying to work through that stuck place we find ourselves in, it's easier for us to complain. So as we read this passage here in James 5, it sounds like he's telling the church, I know you're struggling. I know you're hurting. I know you're having a hard time. Like, I get it. But you're allowing that to influence your attitude towards others. Because what you're experiencing right outside the church, but that attitude is now finding itself in its way into the church. I'm shocked. I am shocked that people were complaining in the church 2,000 years ago. Because thankfully nobody complains in the church today. It's such a great, wonderful organization. I've been in full-time ministry for 26 years. Before that, I I grew up in the church. My dad was a pastor my whole life. And so that's all I've known. All I've known is the church world. All I've known is being around pastors and pastors' families. And that's a good thing. I've loved that aspect of my life. But I've also, through that time, heard a lot of complaints, right? As you can imagine. And buddies of mine have too. I'm in a cohort right now with 4 other lead pastors. This is a photo of us. We're all from the United States, all over the United States. Just real quick, the guy down the bottom here lives in Oregon. So we usually travel twice a year to different places where we live. And so, by the way, these guys are coming to D.C. in April. So I'm looking forward to showing them around. If you got any cool connections, you get me in some secret building, let me know. But this was in Oregon, so we went out there. Just real quick, the guy down at the bottom was like, hey guys, if you've ever been to the Oregon coast, it's like, I got this really cool shipwreck we want to show you. So if you've been there, you know exactly what I'm going to say. Like, in our 4 minds, we're like, a shipwreck, oh, this is going to be so amazing, right? It's going to be big, and maybe we can walk through it. It's going to be incredible. That's all that's left of the shipwreck. We were entirely disappointed and told him that the whole week. I think he was a little frustrated with us. I was like, bro, really? Some metal, 100 years old, this became. But anyway, very cool. Oregon coast, very different than the East Coast, by the way, if you've ever been there before. Beautiful, different, but it was good to be there. So I asked these guys this week, I'm like, hey, tell me some of the complaints that you've gotten in the church. So let me share some of theirs, mine, other people's that I've heard. Here's complaints, all right? Ranges from it's too hot in here to too cold in here. The music's too loud, the music's not loud enough. Sermons are too long, they're not long enough. Use too much scripture, you don't use enough scripture. You talk about politics too much, you don't talk politics enough. The coffee's too hot, the coffee's not hot enough, right? This is kind of this battle that we see. There's also talk of the color of the paint, color of the carpet. Someone was sitting in my seat. I didn't know churches had assigned seating, but apparently. One of these guys was like, there were complaints about musicians having holes in their jeans, somebody wearing a hat. The pastor's wife wasn't friendly. Like all these kind of things kind of come up with complaints within the church. But my all-time favorite comes from Christians who say there's not enough meat. I still to this day can't figure that one out because I have my reasons for why that bothers me. But like in my role and our staff's role, like in any church setting, like you hear complaints and grumblings all the time. The church has been complaining for 2,000 years. And some of you are like, well, that means it's okay for me to complain. It's like a sacrament within the church. No, it's not, okay? That's not what complaining is about. It's not something that's supposed to be a part of the church. For James here, James is saying, hey, grumbling, complaining in the church hurts the unity within the church. See, for James, the bigger issue isn't what's happening outside. Now, he understands the people that he's writing to, that they're having a tough life. Things are hard on them, but he's saying to them, hey, I'm worried about what's coming into our church. Remember what I said a little bit earlier? We build social bonds with others who share similar negative perspectives. And guess what that does? That begins to fracture the connections that are within the church. That begins to fracture the fellowship that should be a part of the church. And many times it even discourages our faith. Like we get to this place where it's like, if I went grumbling and complaining, man, I can do that at home, right? I can do that where I work. I can do that for the sports teams my kids play with. I can do that outside of here. I thought this was supposed to be a different place. And sometimes that seeps into the church and discourages our faith. But I believe it does more than that. And I think this is what James is getting to also. It distracts us from hope. When we're focused on the color of the carpet, color of the paint, someone set my seat, how hot or not hot the temperature of the coffee is, like we lose focus on what's most important. And those things aren't most important. What's most important is our focus on Jesus. So one of the reasons why here at The Journey, we don't have membership. Okay, now maybe you came from a church that had membership. Maybe you're part of a denomination that had membership. We're not against membership. Churches can do whatever they want to do. But when we think about membership, oftentimes we think about it kind of like a Costco membership, right? So you kind of pay your dues or whatever, and you walk in like, hey, I got my card. You can let me in. And so you walk into Costco, and there's an 850-inch television that I think every guy wants to buy, and every wife is like, oh, just keep walking. We need food so we can eat. And so you begin to walk around, and you go to Costco, and membership gets you those little kiosks that they hand out food. and drink that you get to try. Or if you get hungry, you can run and get a $1.50 hot dog or $1.50 slice of pizza, and their pizza is actually really good. So some of you may even just go there to eat meals sometimes. I don't know, but you can because you got a Costco membership. Or you go in that place like, hey, I'm only getting three things. I know this is, you talk yourself into it, three things. You walk out and you spent $2,000 at Costco. Right, but that's what membership is. Like, I get to go use this membership, and I'm going to get something in return. For us, too often, membership in the church feels the same way. Like, I'm doing something, or I'm giving something. That's really what it boils down to. I'm giving something, even if it's a little bit. I deserve something in return. That's not the purpose of the church. And so here at The Journey, we talk about partnership. Like, we are called to something bigger than ourselves. We believe there is a mission that Jesus has called us to, and we partner together, right? We partner together to live that mission out. And we do that because when we are in unity together, like, God can take us and use us and use us in incredible ways in this community and beyond. And so for us, we talk about partnership and the importance of being a partner here. I want to invite you to something. We have a partnership night coming on October the 19th. That is a Sunday night from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Someone just said, hey, that's like the middle part of the Dallas-Washington game. I'm a Cowboys fan. That tells you how much I feel like we're going to lose that game, so I don't even care that particular night. Maybe we'll put it on the screens. You can watch while I'm talking. I don't know. But anyway, if you're a partner here at The Journey already, man, we'd love for you to be a part of that because we're going to talk about, again, just kind of a reminder of the expectations of what it looks like to be a mission partner with us. But maybe you're sitting there like, I want to come too because I want to know something. Hey, we're inviting you to be a part of that too. Even if you're not a partner, come. We're just kind of doing this big thing for this one particular night. We're going to talk about who we are, our vision, our mission, where we've been, kind of where we're going in the future, where we believe God's leading us. But if you're like, man, I don't want to be a partner, I just want to show up. Don't show up, okay? It's not just to show up just for fun. Like, we want people who are saying, hey, I want to know more about this mission we're on. I want to know how I can be a part of it. And so mark that on your calendar for October the 19th from 6 to 7:30. We'll have babysitting, so we'll take care of that. We'll have some desserts to hang out. So we're going to have tables, so it's going to be a fun time. I hope you will do that. Sign up through the QR code in the seat in front of you or also through our app. We want to do that because we want to talk about what unity looks like, right? When we are unified, moving in the same direction, what does that look like for us as a church? This is what James is saying too. He's like, don't let the tough times you're going through, the hard times, the suffering that you're experiencing in your life find its way into the church so that you start to grumble and complain and it starts to bring this division within the church. Remember who you find your hope in. He's like, it's Jesus. Remember what you're hoping for. You can't wait till Jesus' return, whenever that may be. Learn to be patient in the waiting as you focus on Jesus. Then he says this in verse 10, for examples of patience and suffering, dear brothers and sisters, look at the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. We give great honor to those who endure under suffering. For instance, you know about Job, a man of great endurance. You can see how the Lord was kind to him at the end, for the Lord is full of tenderness and mercy. James shares a couple of examples here. He talks about the prophets and how the prophets would do whatever God called them to do. And they mostly didn't complain about it. They listened. What their complaints were about the Israelites who weren't listening to what they were telling them that God had shared with the prophets to share with the Israelites. But he's like, hey, you remember them? Man, they did amazing things. They didn't complain. They were patient with whatever God had planned and in store for them. They were focused on following God. He brings up Job. Job's in the Old Testament. There's a whole book on the story of Job. And if you know the story, he experienced incredible loss. Like, very beginning of the book, he loses his wife. He loses all of his family and kids. He loses all of his possessions. And yet, if you know the story, in the midst of this incredible suffering, we see him exhibit amazing perseverance and patience. Like, it was this consistent obedience to God in his troubles that made his life legendary to the Jews. And so they would always go back and talk about his patience and his endurance, even going through those tough times in life. So when James is talking about patience here, and he uses these examples of the prophets and Job, it actually is connecting back to the same patience that we read about in verses 7 and 8. Now, This patience isn't just kind of sitting around and waiting for something to happen. It's not like sitting at the baggage claim waiting for your bags to come through. It's more of a steadfastness. It's an attitude of long suffering, that no matter what you're going through in life, that you're able to continue to move forward. And in that, you're not complaining. You're not finding fault, even under the trials that you're facing. Society may say, hey, we're going to have pity on you because you're suffering. As a follower of Christ, man, we should see suffering as opportunities to grow our faith and opportunities for us to endure what comes our way. I told you a little bit earlier, as we're reading this today, it's going to jump back to another part of James. It actually takes us back to the very first week. We talked about James chapter 1. James wrote, "For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing." I shared that week that word tested there was actually connected to the smelting process, and how you would take this ore and you would burn it at this incredible heat, and all the things that were bad and didn't need, you could sweep them away, but the precious metals were left over. I said our souls should go through that when we are going through suffering. Like, no matter what we're facing in life, those trials, that suffering, that hurt, that pain, the troubles. Like, when we're focused on Jesus, those things that don't mean anything, those things that are keeping us from following Jesus, like, we get to this place where we can kind of sweep those away as our soul goes through that smelting process. We learn how to endure and to be patient in those hard times in life. In fact, when do people grow the most in their relationship with God? When they're facing adversity and in the waiting. Right? Those are the two places I believe we grow the most in our relationship with God, when our focus is on Jesus. That's why I love the song that David writes. It's Psalm 40, written by David, immortalized by U2, if you know it. And every time I read it, I sing it in my head. I would sing it for you out loud, but you would never come back to this church, so I'm just going to read it. He writes this. He says, "I waited patiently for the Lord to help me, and he turned to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the pit of despair, out of the mud and mire. He set my feet on solid ground and steadied me as I walked along." Like, I read this part of this song that David writes, and I'm like, this is what James is talking about here. In fact, as we read this here in this song David writes, look at verse 12. It says, "For troubles surround me, too many to count." Scholars don't know exactly what's happening in David's life when he writes this. Some say that's connected to his sin against Uriah and Bathsheba. Others say it's connected to him running from King Saul, who was trying to kill him. Whatever the reason may have been for him writing this song, it talks about this pit of despair he finds himself in, right? This muck, this mud, this mire, and yet what does he do? He waits patiently on God to help him through it. How does God help him? If you keep reading down through chapter 40 there, that song 40, you're going to find that near the end, he talks about how God saves him, how God rescues him, or even what we read right here, how God sets his feet on solid ground. That in every step that David's taken, even though he's going through this hard time in his life, that it's like God is just taking each leg and each foot and just placing it firm in the foundation, no matter what he's going through in life. Like, I think about this song that David writes, and I believe that's what James is reminding the early church of. The troubles you're facing at the hands of the rich, the suffering you're facing through the persecution that's taken place because of your belief in Jesus, the anxiety you have, right? Waiting on Jesus to return to help you find some peace from this life. Let God set you on firm ground. Let God steady you for each step that you take moving forward, because God is in the midst of that. And so keep your focus on Jesus. I love this quote from Corrie ten Boom. She was a writer and Christian, and her family helped save and rescue hundreds of Jews from the Nazis during the Holocaust. She wrote, "There is no pit so deep that God's love is not deeper still. Whatever it is that you are going through, no matter what it is that you are suffering in your life right now, like God is in the midst of that with you. And God asks in that, can you be patient with me? Can you keep your focus on me? Because if you do, I will strengthen you. I will help you through that. I mean, the purpose of patience is to strengthen our faith in God so we can endure what comes our way. Well, how do we do that? Well, let me leave you with a couple of items, 3 things that I think can help us focus more on being patient when it comes to our lives. The first thing I would say is patience means we trust God's timing. Some of you may have heard these sayings before. God can do what God wants to do when God wants to do it. Or God is always late and God is always on time. Right? We have our time and think, okay, God, here's what's going on. Here's where I'm suffering. This is the struggle I'm having. I'm praying about this. Help me out. Take this away. And yet that's my timing. And my timing and God's timing, it's funny, oftentimes aren't exactly at the same time. I think that's why this example of the farmer works so well. In this waiting, we are active. And that active piece of us is that we are focused on Jesus. A farmer doesn't just sit around, right? A farmer doesn't just kind of sit around, look at the field and say, yeah, I hope some crops are going to grow out there. They got to put work in. Till the field, put the seeds in, take care of the weeds, pray for the rain. And when they pray for the rain, they're waiting for God to do what only God can do in God's timing. Now, for us, we may think that patience is unproductive. And I would say that patience isn't unproductive. Patience isn't laziness. Patience is our faith in action. That's what Joel talked about last week. Like patience is something we do and we learn to live by. It is this faith that we put into action because we are trusting God with the results that will come from our patience. And so we have to learn to be patient and then trust God with the outcome, because patience means we trust God's timing. But patience also means we use our words to build and not tear down. It's so easy when we're not patient to complain and to grumble. Again, that's what James is talking about here, and it's finding itself into the church setting. So we kind of need to check our tone, check on what we're saying to other people, what we're sharing. Am I using this to tear someone down? Or think about this, am I using this to tear the church down? Or am I using this to build others up or to build the church up? And maybe the best thing we can do right here is actually when we have these frustrations, our first step is not someone else. Our first step is God. Our first step is just to stop and to pray like, hey, God, I'm dealing with some serious frustrations. I'm feeling this troubles, these trials, these suffering. I know it's getting ready to permeate itself in what I say to other people. Give me guidance. Help me be patient. Lead me. Maybe lead me to someone who I can just say, hey, I just need to talk through this. Help me take healthy next steps. Because the role of us in the church in patience means that we use words that build up and not tear down. And then lastly, patience gives us the endurance to live our lives fully for Jesus. Being patient doesn't mean we have to remain silent. And being patient when we're going through tough times doesn't mean we have to do the Christian, in the church Sunday morning fake smile like, how are you doing? Everything's great, when internally everything's not. It's not talking about hiding those things. It means being able to hold on to what God is doing in our lives, even though we can't make sense of what we're going through or experiencing. Like we get endurance, not because God gives us some incredible superpowers, not because we just have like true grit, none of that at all. It's because our endurance is fueled by remembering God's nature towards us. That last little part there talks about tenderness and mercy. Like God is compassionate, right? God is compassionate for us, compassionate towards those that are hurting. God hurts when we hurt, but God is also full of mercy, that whatever we're going through, like we don't deserve what God gives us. And yet God says, hey, no matter what you've going through, no matter what you're suffering in your life, maybe some of it's stuff that you've brought upon yourself, I still have this incredible mercy for you. I have this incredible, incredible, unconditional love for you. And God loves us in spite of ourselves. I believe when we know that, it helps us to endure through whatever life throws our way. Patience gives us the endurance to live our lives fully for Jesus. What do next steps look like for this? I'm just going to share this one thing. Maybe today is a day that we take a deep breath and we ask ourselves this question: what is God teaching me through what I'm going through right now? I go back to that phrase we started out with: patience is a virtue. And I'm going to go against that and say, I don't think patience is a virtue. I think patience is who we are called to be. Like Paul even writes about this in Galatians. He talks about the fruit of the Spirit. He's like, if you're fully following Jesus and God's Spirit lives in you, one of the qualities that you're going to have, one of the characteristics that you're going to have is you're going to be a person who is patient. And so that means that no matter what we face in life, no matter what we endure, the suffering we go through, whatever might be happening in our life right now, like if we have this patience that can only come through God, we can have this incredible endurance through whatever it is that comes our way. And that's all because of God's tenderness and mercy towards us. And so as we come into this time of communion this morning, may it remind us of this tenderness and mercy that God has for us. May it remind us of this unconditional love that we see that God gives us through the gift of Jesus. Like that's love, that's tenderness, that's mercy. And by the way, that's God's patience with us. And may we be patient people as God strengthens us as we endure through the sufferings of life. And we're reminded of that patience that God had with us that we need ourselves through this act of communion.